Hello, my name is Rosalind McDonough. I'm the Resilience and Emergency Planning Manager at Doncaster Council. My job is to consider all the hazards and threats, things that could affect our everyday life, consider those hazards and threats with our partners and put plans and arrangements in place to respond if those things happen. When we develop plans and arrangements as well, we also train around those arrangements, we exercise and we share awareness about the hazards and threats and what things people can do to keep themselves safe. And importantly, we're on call 24/7, so we're available to help and support in the event of emergencies, incidents and disruptive challenges to everyday life, really. Doncaster Council works closely with our community flood wardens. These are all local Doncaster residents who've had experience of flooding and keep us updated on flood risk within their area. One of the flood wardens that I work with is Keith Wilburn. He's a community flood warden who lives in the village of Tolbar. Keith and I talk regularly. Keith is constantly out checking watercourses and feeding back to me and letting me know how things are looking, what's happening out there and the different seasonal changes and how they're impacting on flood risk in the area.
The partnership between us and the council is very important because we get the feedback from each other. We now work as a team. We are very good together.
Keith is very much at the forefront of helping his community practically, working with the emergency services, providing local information to the emergency services and making sure that during evacuations that everyone's been evacuated as well and making sure that the vulnerable people in the community have been highlighted to the emergency services.
It is life-threatening and that's what people really should be taking into account. You know, if the water's coming in to your house, you know, you've got to be safe yourself. Make sure that you're safe.
"2007 was exceptional for me in that we had a huge amount of rainfall. I think it'd been the wettest June on record in the UK, and some areas of Doncaster actually had a month's worth of rainfall in one day. Following that heavy rainfall, we had 48 different communities in Doncaster that flooded. We needed to evacuate 3,000 residents and we had major damage to homes. We had about 290 businesses damaged as well. In the first few days, we had over 7,500 calls for help and assistance, so we had to put a huge response in place to support people affected by the flooding.
I mean, our village were flooded, they must say it was flooded for about 3 weeks before the water actually went. I had family that were in the village who was really badly taken by it and they still suffer to this day. In fact, if it rains heavy, it takes that memory back again.
People had to be evacuated from their homes, often with very little notice, taken to places of shelter and safety. They were frightened, they hadn't got the right medication, they didn't have waterproof clothing with them, and many people had to stay there for weeks and weeks.
The impact it had on them, it made them ill. One or two people, it's also, they never went back to the house.
The recovery process following flooding is a long process. The impacts of flooding are far-reaching. Initially, there is upset, shock, anger about what's happened. Then the process of recovery and rebuilding, restoring, it starts, and it's very, very difficult. When people are in rest centres, we try and prepare people for what it's going to look like when they go home, but nobody can prepare you for what it looks like when you go home.
You know, when you take somebody back to their own house and you see what devastation is in the house and then people how it affects them, it can break them there and then. We try and deal with it best we can. But when you take them into the house and you see all their belongings floating about in the house, it's so, you know, it's so upsetting for them, like, you know, it really is.
There's other things as well the flood takes away. It takes away your social networks, so maybe your schools are disrupted. It takes away the local shop that you depend on, the local post office. It damages the roads that you normally use to go to work. Maybe you've even lost your place of work. So it takes away your social networks as well as your place of safety. People that I've worked with who've experienced flooding talk about they've lost the home but they've rebuilt a house, and that's quite hard to hear. It is very important, if we're asking people to evacuate their homes, that they do listen to the advice they're given. It's not a decision we take lightly. It's usually when there is a genuine risk or threat to your life, and importantly your family's life as well. So what we ask you to do is keep aware, tune into whatever media source you're used to, whether that's the radio or the television or social media. And if you're not sure, check it out. You can go on a website, you can ring the helplines that we set up as a council. If you are asked to evacuate, please follow the advice you're given. You'll be told where to go to, where the place of safety being set up, and once you get there, there'll be lots more information about what's happening, and there's trained people there to help and support you as well.